Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Franchise Show. This is the show, and I'm going to do it where we get under the hat of some of the most important topics in franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it's live if it's April the 8th, 2025, at somewhere around 5:15 GMT or 12:15 EST for about 50 minutes. So if you are here live, pop a comment in. Say hello even, because this show is all about you, the audience and the community that we have in franchising. You're the directors and the producers of this show. So we love it when you get involved. We love your questions, and we can go down any route we want. So what do? Every week we take a new topic and we take a lovely guest, and we have a lovely guest this week, and we have a fantastic topic. So today we are going to be talking about the franchise life cycle. And it's a really interesting topic. We're going to take the perspective of a franchisee and a franchisor and how that life cycle and that relationship changes over those months and years. You know, how we can best support as well. So it's a great conversation. And to have that fantastic conversation, we have the wonderful Robert Zapata. Robert, welcome to the Franchise Show.
Thanks so much, Harvey. Really excited to be here. And I see Johnny. He's from LA.
That's it.
LA through.
Yeah, exactly. We have people from all over the place in US, Europe, UK, and we'll be bringing all of those people up on the screen as they're arriving this evening or this afternoon from your perspective. But anyway, before we do that, I'd like to introduce Robert to you. And perhaps, Robert, you could give a little introduction to yourself and a little introduction to JustWorks, because of course you're wonderful. You're one of our wonderful supporters. So I really appreciate that. So perhaps you could give our audience an idea of who you are and a little bit about what JustWorks is.
Yeah, amazing. So I'll give you guys high level, kind of just my background and kind of how I came to JustWorks. So before JustWorks, I actually led partnerships at one of the largest mission-driven small business lenders in the US. And then most recently, I was at Salesforce, where I led the business value for our enterprise clients, which basically, better way to say is I just showcased ROI on what sales products were in terms of kind of how showing kind of the quantitative and qualitative benefits of the products and so forth. And lastly, now I am here at JustWorks, where I lead partnerships specifically in the franchise space. And with that, I mean, at a very high level, so JustWorks, kind of the best way to think about it is really JustWorks is an organization, a tech platform that really kind of helps take the headache out of HR, payroll, compliance, and benefits, and really allows small business owners and franchisees and franchisors to focus on what matters in terms of running the business. So when you think at a high level, like even with HR support, which I'm sure a lot of the people here who are either franchisors or franchisees or even thinking about getting into this space. So even with HR support, these things get really complicated really fast. And especially in today's world, it is, I would say, harder than ever, if you will. And so we basically make it really easy for small business owners, franchisees, and franchisors to really access, call it Fortune 500 benefits, and also compliance support by experts, all at small business prices, and then all in one easy to use platform.
Sure. Fantastic. Great explanation of what you do and a lovely introduction to yourself, Robert. And of course, all of these things are really valid and really important when we're looking at the life cycle of a franchisee and how the franchisor and the franchisee can navigate that life cycle. But before we get into this, we need to welcome our fantastic community, and that's just what we're going to do right now. So we have, of course, the ever wise Simon Wise. He's incredibly wise, is Mr. Wise. And he's put, hello, franchise friends. Well, hello to you, Simon. Always great to have you here. Looking forward to your thoughts on the franchise life cycle and how we navigate that. We have, of course, and as mentioned by Robert earlier, we've got the wonderful Johnny Joseph. And he's put, hola, from a lovely Los Angeles at 9:16 a.m. Yes, in fact, we had somebody from Australia. So I think we 1 week, so we were going from morning to next day, everyone at the same time. So we have people from all over the world. Johnny is, of course, a franchise auditor. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts on how auditing and that relationship affects that life cycle. We have the lovely Julie Waits with us. Julie's put, good evening from the sunny northeast of England. Really looking forward to this one, Harvey and Robert. Well, we are looking forward to it too. We have the fantastic Neil Newman from Gather. And again, another one of our fantastic supporters. He's put, hi, all from the sunny south. We have Nick Plevin here, again, one of our fantastic supporters. Nick is from etalent, and he's put, hello everyone from a surprisingly sunny Scotland. Yes, the sun does make it up there sometimes. We've got Johnny, who is saying hello to you, Robert. And we've got a couple more people I want to recognize before we get into this conversation, perhaps with a question from Simon. So we've got the lovely Tim Morris. Tim's put, afternoon, franchise friends. Phew, after a mad dash down to London and back, I made it. Great to be here. Love the franchise show community. Well, we love this community too, including you, Tim. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the franchise life cycle. And you've got a lot of experience in that. Tim is, we hope, going to be one of our future supporters of the show. So Tim, always good to have you with us and really looking forward to your thoughts. We have the lovely Penny Hopkinson. Penny is, of course, a very early supporter of the show and is all things ops manuals. Has wrote a fantastic book. And have I got your book, Penny? Is it going to be the right way round? No, it's not. I'm sorry, Penny. But if you want to get your ops manuals the right way round, then reach out to Penny. And Penny's put, hello, Harvey, Robert, and franchise friends from a gorgeous, sunny Warwickshire. Well, look, that I think brings us to a conclusion of welcoming our fantastic franchise community. So, Robert, let's start off with your understanding of the franchise life cycle and where these elements sort of slot into that. Just some high level stuff here. I mean, typically, a franchise agreement might be 5 years. People are going to start off excited. Then there's going to be some dips and, some ups and downs. And what's your sort of experience of that and, the peaks and troughs of that relationship?
Well, I'm really happy you asked me that. So, I mean, high level for everyone as well. So, I've done quite a bit of due diligence on, call it like the franchise, industry, and I've spoken to a variety of different consultants, brokers, and kind of influencers like Harvey. And so, to kind of start this off so that you guys kind of know about kind of my experience and credibility in the space, I really try to take the vantage point of being seeing all different stakeholders and really kind of seeing the pain points for everyone. So for both a franchisor and a franchisee. And so kind of high level, when you think about really kind of these pain points within that kind of life cycle of a franchise, if you will. I think the best way to kind of bucket it is from what I've learned, and shout out to Rick Grossman, the franchise Bible coach. He kind of helped really illustrate this for me. So there's really three components that I would say are kind of challenges that a lot of people don't see early on. And so the first one I would say is really when you're thinking about a franchisor, someone that is very early on an emerging brand and so forth, they're starting their business and looking to franchise it. So one of the biggest pain points for them is going from an operator role to then becoming more of a supporter for when they start bringing on the franchisees. That usually proves difficult because that skill set of an operator is completely different from the skill set of a supporter for the franchisees, where then you're helping them grow and so forth. That's just that at a high level, and we can go more into the depth into that. Then the second one I would say is one that really kind of applies to both the franchisor and the franchisee. And then that's really call it what I believe Rick Grossman would call it is the gap. And so say that once you sign that FDD, and then once you're kind of moving forward in the process, you're stoked, your dream of, running, call it a Pilates studio or whatever that may be, is finally in the works. The thing is that what I've learned is some franchises are better at the initial training and so forth early on than others. But then kind of once you are able to kind of get things going and you pass that initial training, then you're kind of on your own as a franchisee to kind of figure it out. And again, some franchises are better than others that support. And so I think that's an important kind of pain point for a lot of people, because some people are better than others. They're more savvy at running a business than others. And I think it's so important to understand that. And then lastly, I think when you're thinking about a franchise as a whole, in either both the franchisor or the franchisee, in terms of thinking about now multi-unit development, there's something called the franchise doldrums. And so that is something where around that 11 to 24 mark in units of a franchise, now you're starting to kind of, if you did start a franchise, now you're kind of losing, what Rick would call is that inner circle, in the sense of like, you were able to reach out to your friends and so forth and really kind of have those conversations early on to really kind of impress upon them the brand and the systems and so forth. But now when you're really kind of putting it out after the inner circle to kind of just brand new franchisees as a whole who you may not have that relationship with, that's where a lot of franchises kind of start to lose a lot of steam and possibly failure. And then tying that into, the large, I would say, failure rate of a lot of franchises as a whole. And for me personally, from what I've learned, it's just more the fact of a lack of systems that kind of lead to that, in addition to that, the franchisee not necessarily feeling supported. So I know that was a lot as a whole, but, I would say if we want to bucket kind of the pain points, and we can go more into depth on the kind of sub pain points in each of those, we can definitely do that.
Sounds fantastic. No, thanks for that, Robert. We've got a question here from Simon. I just want to quickly recognize the fact that we've got the lovely Louise Harris with us. Louise, welcome to the show. She's put hello all. Louise Harris is here. Really hoping you can see my profile. Well, we certainly can, Louise, and it's fantastic to have you with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the life cycle, those ups and downs. Where do we start as franchisors to support our franchisees during these periods of time? You mentioned that, we're going to put Simon's comment up in a moment, because he speaks about support during these difficult times. So I think that it's a really relevant comment. In fact, let's do it right now. Let's do it right now. Here is Simon's question. He's put, you have to know where each franchisee is on the life cycle, so your support is on point and relevant to their needs as yours as a franchisor. I think this is a really interesting one, because like you said, Robert, somebody, whether it's an emerging brand or even whether it's a more established brand, let's take the franchisee for a moment. Okay. Now, any new franchisee at the beginning, excitement levels are going to be high, training is going to be fresh. So, they're going to start off pretty high, and then, as that period of time comes on, you mentioned there the doldrums, and I think that's a really interesting word to sort of pick out, as to where that comes. Does it come when you're battling the sort of the HR and the recruitment sort of side of things, and the payroll? Often I think these pain points that you spoke of, Robert, come in, let's say maybe at the 18-month point. And I'd love to get everyone's thoughts as to where this first dip appears, and what we do to, I guess, support and overcome that. You mentioned there, Robert, a gap. In fact, you know what? I'm going to put up a QR code to our future sponsor, actually, because we can't have this conversation without mentioning them. So Tim and Nikki, there you go. They have an organization called The Bridge, and it deals exactly with that gap between the franchisor and the franchisee, that support where and when you need it. So it's really relevant. It's really important to understand where you are in that life cycle. But perhaps, Robert, let's take admin. Okay, let's take admin and what that does. When you're kind of like a bit fed up with that sort of side of things. Do you think that's where the doldrums come from? These sort of laborious tasks, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think doldrums, if you want to expand it past that kind of 11-24 unit mark, I mean, I think everyone kind of starts to cycle into their doldrums, no matter how much, where they're at in their life cycle journey. So if you think maybe 1 to 3 or whatever that may be in terms of units, or even just starting one, I think, you can kind of fall into that cycle, because it's really dependent on your experience level as a business owner and so forth. And so kind of really to kind of paint a picture more on the human side as well is, for a lot of these, or franchisees, you don't know what you don't know. And so with that, you buy into the system, and, again, you have these hopes and dreams and you're riding high. And then, when you actually start to get into the nitty gritty of running a business, that is something that really no one teaches you until you kind of have to start learning on your own. And so that, that's admin work in the sense of how do we break that down? So that's even going into hiring, training, and you've got payroll, and then you've got, compliance, and then you've got, benefits, and then, all that in itself is almost like, you need a very intensive crash course to be able to really understand, and, tying that together, though, making sure that it's modern as well, really kind of puts people in this kind of, they have a lot to learn very quickly. And on top of that, that's trying to also get a business off of ground in terms of really kind of growing, your dream, what you came in for, and kind of how you want to continue build off and drive that mission of what you originally bought into as a whole. So the best way I can kind of like sum it up as a whole is, what we try to do at JustWorks is really be able to kind of take that off your plate in a sense. I wouldn't say the boring stuff, but it is something where it's like, when people buy into a franchise, they don't dream of, or even a small business owner, they don't dream of having the best 401k plan or like the best benefits for their employees. What they dream about is really starting their business and really following their dream as a whole. And so for us, it's really kind of helping kind of take these kind of pain points off their plate, and then really allowing them to really focus on kind of that growth that they came in searching for in the first place. And then I think one simple way to say this is, 1 hour that's focused on admin work is really an hour that is taken away on revenue generating activities, growing your team, thinking about strategic planning and so forth. And when you are an emerging franchisee or so forth, like, time is critical. So being able to really invest that time in things that matter is what's most important. I think that's where JustWorks really gives you an edge, and really being kind of this kind of strategic partner, shall we say, day-to-day strategic partner after the FDD is signed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was really interesting and important what you said there about the admin side of things. If you're ending up doing too much of that, beyond where is right for your particular franchise model, and you're not doing things that are more effective, more interesting, this is where some of those dips might come. And these things need to be assessed as you're going along in your particular franchise. Let's have a little look here. We've got a few other people that have joined us, and then I'm going to bring up a couple of comments from Louise, from Simon, and from Johnny. So we have the lovely Deborah Salisbury from the Reading Doctor just tuned in. Great to have you with us, Deborah. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts as a franchisor on what that life cycle is for your franchisees and how you navigate that, how you support people through that, how you can. I think a lot of people say to me that you've got a sort of 80-10-10 situation with your franchisees. You've got 10% that are absolutely flying high. You've got 80% that are somewhere in the middle doing okay. And then you've got 10% that are perhaps towards the exit side of things. And it's how you get that 80% into that 10% that are flying, or whatever your numbers are. So it'd be fantastic to hear all of your thoughts. Let's have a look at this and welcome Tom Higginson. And Tom has put Rob. So Tom is a fan of yours, Rob. So great to have you with us, Tom. Now let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at a comment here from Louise. Louise has put, I believe many franchisors don't think big from day one. It is useful to anticipate the support requirements, the training needs, and the pain points, to coin the phrase, as your network grows, and not just wing it. Absolutely. You've got to try and think ahead as to how you might support someone. I talk to a lot of people about their franchise pre-signing up schedule, right? Their journey, right? And then, but it's actually that journey while they're a franchisee, it continues, and if you can at least, not accurately, but at least have a go at seeing where people are in that journey. Is there a pattern that emerges is a really interesting question. And another thing, and you mentioned this, Robert, you said there that 11 to 24 units. I mean, it's perhaps different here in the UK because, the US, you get a lot more units. But, Louisa said here, as your network grows, things change. So again, as you're growing your franchise business, whether you're a franchisee or a franchisor, it's important to consider, how you're feeling, what's going on and where you're at. What's your thoughts on that? What's what's your thought on this about anticipating this stuff? You know, when you talk to people about supporting through your platform, you know, do you sort of have the tools ready to mold and flex as things change? Or do you talk about predicting what might happen and then putting the tools in place?
So taking a step back, I think it's important to kind of understand and perhaps be a little bit empathetic to the fact of like what the franchisor journey is. We focus a lot on the franchisee journey, but I think they're two in the same a little bit. And with emerging brands for them, the focus is so much on being able to get traction and to scale as quickly as possible, trying to hit their 5 to 50 units. And I know in the UK it's a little different, but a lot of it is really trying to grow your brand as quickly as possible. And then when you're thinking about, call it, more mature brands, it's more about thinking, the being able to kind of provide the same experience for, I don't know, 100 plus, units and so forth, and protecting the brand and, call it, improving validation and so forth. And, with them, the pain points is, really being able to kind of support the teams that they have, the franchisees, but, they're stretched thin as a whole. And so when you're thinking about, call it, the experience of kind of both, it really all comes down to being able to provide almost like a plug and play system that really is able to be that strategic partner again for, that franchisee or even the franchisor. So for us, I mean, we put a lot of pride. We started about 12 years ago. Our founder was an early employee of Etsy. And he saw the pain points early on for a lot of small business owners. And in a sense, small business owners and franchisees, in a sense, they're underserved. And so for us, we put a lot of focus on being able to be an organization that's mission driven to really serve, those small business owners as a whole. And then we do that really and call it a 3-pronged kind of a way. So the first one I would say is really our technology. If you look on G2, which is one of the best kind of review sites for kind of software as a whole, you'll read through our reviews, simple to use, intuitive, and all that. And our technology is built in-house based on the reviews and everything that we hear from clients. I would say probably one of the most important differentiators for JustWorks as a whole. And, I want to kind of stay balanced between like pitching us, even though I'm, I love JustWorks. I'll say that up front. I am a little biased, but, our 24/7 support, for us, my background leading partnerships at a mission-driven small business lender, and, specifically after the recession, I have a very special place in my heart for small business owners and the struggles that they go through. And for that, I put a lot of emphasis on technical assistance. And so for us, we have 24/7 customer support, and we are an industry leader in customer support. So if you have a problem at payroll, whatever, at 2 a.m., we are there for you. We have multiple layers of customer support that are really there for you as a whole. And then lastly, and I'll wrap it up because I don't want to take too much time on this, but lastly, it's our transparency as well. We are one of very few organizations that are, present all our prices online. And then also, we just want to make sure that, there's no surprises or hidden fees for our small business owners so that they can properly plan moving forward.
Sure. No, I mean, you make a lot of points that are relevant here to the franchise life cycle, because transparency in terms of a franchisor to a franchisee is really important. It's really important that you keep that communication up, that you are transparent, you are honest, because that is what keeps that relationship good. Being available when your franchisees need it. some of these pain points come through frustrations with communication, not being able to be there for your franchisees when they need you, and good franchise systems and good franchisors have things in place to support their franchisees when they need it. So really important. Let's have a look, because we got some good comments coming in. So let's take Simon's one here. Simon's put, okay, we were talking about where the doldrums begin, and he's put following the payment of the first royalty check. Usually that's when it starts to dip. Well, I mean, joking aside, if you're not putting the right tools in place, and as franchisors, that's what we do. We are providing tools for people. We're not doing the work for someone, we're providing them with a set of tools. And that tool bag is going to be different for different franchise systems. What you do there, Robert, is a fantastic tool to add into that toolbox. And then a franchisee can use those tools. You mentioned a plug and play, sort of dipping into these tools as and when you need it. At the beginning, we were talking about identifying where you are on the life cycle. Well, where you are on that life cycle might mean that you need a different tool. So yeah, love that. Let's have a look. We've got comments coming up from Johnny, from Penny, from Tim, and from Nick. Let's take one from Nick. Oh look, and your QR code's there. That's good, isn't it? And Nick has put, have you thought of adding more services to your platform? If so, which services? That's a great question, Nick. We're talking about this life cycle. We're talking about how we can support our franchise systems during the ups and downs of this life cycle. You've obviously got a focus or a concentration, Robert, on some elements in there. Are there some new ones you're looking to add in the future?
We're actually, so a lot of what I said is really one of our, I would say, core products, which is PEO, which is a professional employer organization, which, quick sum up on that, is just a smarter way of being able to handle all these responsibilities at scale and do this for the small business owners that we represent, over 12,000 businesses, 200,000 employees. And so for us, we've taken a very thoughtful approach and really trying to create this ecosystem as a whole for all our small business owners, wherever they are in their journey. So if you think, you have one employee or you're just a founder early on, the ecosystem of our services really is, in that point, it would be, getting payroll and then using that product. And then as you continue to grow, that's when you continue to add more services. So then when you think about adding, employees or whatever that it may be, then, that's when you can start to think about adding on, benefits, which then we haven't touched on, is a huge point in franchises as a whole, because just being able to recruit and retain top talent is an issue as itself, because you're competing against big brands and so forth that can offer all these perks. So for us, we offer these Fortune 500 level benefits that in itself is a huge value add. But then you think as terms of as that small business owner continues to grow and really being able to kind of offer, again, the full suite of products that we offer. So then that's when you kind of move more into the PEO. So, as we are kind of creating this ecosystem to really provide as much value for you and really show up for you when it matters most at each inflection point of your business, we have the services to kind of help walk you through that. But again, the 24/7 customer support to really kind of create this journey and map this out, so you don't have to do that on your own, which I feel is probably one of the biggest pain points of being an entrepreneur. You don't feel like you have the real support, that day-to-day support, and that's so important. And then lastly, I will say, a big focus of ours is now moving to the international space in terms of what our product is, the employee of record product, EOR. And so that really gives franchises and small business owners the opportunity to be able to hire outside of the US, and not necessarily have to get stuck in all the paperwork and so forth of trying to operate in a new country. And that, has a ton of value in terms of time savings and all of that stuff as well. So I know that was a long-winded kind of answer to that question, but overall, I would say, our products are really kind of broken down into meeting, whatever small business owner, franchisor, or franchisee in whatever kind of part of the journey they're at in that life cycle.
No, that's great. You've got to, with the tools in your tool bag, in your franchisor tool bag, you've got to have the right tools, and they've got to be able to help keep that level of support where it needs to be. And it's different. It's different for different individuals. It's different for different franchise systems. But, you've got to understand your business and then recognize which tools you need to put in that bag. Let's have a look at a comment here from Tim. He's put, it's very important to understand that all things being equal, the only real difference between franchise locations is the franchisee, their personality and mindset. Therefore, it is important to ensure that the support, no matter where they are on the life cycle, to laser focus support each individual. Not easy, but it does get the best results for all. Yeah, great point here, Tim. I really like this one. That personality, that mindset, there's so many variables, isn't there? So you really do have to have an adaptable system that supports. But there's no doubt about it in my mind that the doldrums, and I'm going to use that word, hopefully Rick's all right with that, but this dip, it's going to come when that enthusiasm wears off, and sort of some normality sets in and some challenges then arrive, so you've got to be very aware of what they are. But in terms of that normality, and some of the things that aren't as exciting to do as other things, some of these admin and the payroll stuff and HR, those are definitely some of the areas I think that people might want tools to make that an easier process, and therefore allowing them to get on with the stuff they love doing. I'm going to go back to something was said at the beginning, hopes and dreams. When you invest into your business, whether it's a franchise business or not, but when you're investing into that business, you have all of those hopes, all of those dreams. You've imagined in your mind what this is going to be like, and you're excited. And keeping that level of enthusiasm and excitement up through this life cycle is really challenging. But I think taking some of the boring stuff out is going to help. But no, love that. Let's have a look at a comment here from Penny. I'm going to read this one through, and we'll both have a look at this. Penny's put, we would hope that the operations manual will help franchisees know what they don't know. The life cycle should be represented through a dynamic, engaging, knowledge-sharing ecosystem created bottom up, not top down. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with this. You've got to, your ops manual, is your reference point. When you create a franchise business from an idea or like you say, a business you're operating yourself, your ops manual is what is then teaching other people how that franchise is operated, and if you can get that dynamic, if you can get that interesting, then you've got a better chance of keeping people engaged, haven't you? What do you think about that, Robert? I mean, it's the same thing I would have thought with sort of ops manuals as it is for admin. It's having a more dynamic and interesting way to do that. Make it easier so that you can get on with other things, and that's just what you do, isn't it?
Yeah, so I would say there, what sparks for me there is the sense that, hearing, the importance of this operations manual, the FTD and all that stuff. And, just thinking, the thing is that, again, right, you have this initial training that kind of gives you an outline and so forth. And then you have this manual, and then, the excitement is at an all-time high and so forth. But then, the reality is trying to start coming in, and then you kind of, start getting lost in the heat of the moment, if you will, with running the business. You're pulled here. This is all new for a lot of these people that are starting these businesses with the dreams of multi-unit expansion and all of that. And so I think it's important to understand that, a manual is great. But, a manual can only get you so far, and, really being, really kind of getting through those pain points of, having a, not necessarily having a strategic partner to have that, day-to-day conversations in terms of kind of being able to manage kind of these things that, are pain points. Like we've talked about the HR and all that stuff. And, to be completely honest, like, again, no one dreams of being an HR expert, for their business, or, becoming an HR expert overnight. And so with that, if I can ask the audience, or really anyone listening to this, in the future, is, if you could take that out, right, and then actually focus on what you came into, what, from day one, when you saw this brand and you were like, this is what I want to go after. This is what I want to invest my time in. These are the people that I want to help. If we can take that off your plate and allow you to focus on that, it not only works out for the small business owner, the franchisee, in a sense of really going after their dreams, but then on the other side, it really helps the franchisor by giving them peace of mind, knowing that, they don't have to kind of take away from continuing to build the brand and so forth, and create kind of more of that dream at scale for people. It's really something that I think works both ways in the value proposition that JustWorks provides.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I was going to pick up on there is being pulled here and pulled there. And I think Penny made some really great points about the ops manual, because, she was saying, rather than that being that static thing, Penny always talks about it being a knowledge sharing base, a dynamic thing, so that what we're trying to do is to get people focused on the thing they love, the reason they started this in the first place. If you can keep people focused on the thing they love and keep people doing the thing they love, then those doldrums won't come into play so often, So I think that's a really interesting point we've come to. Whatever the tool is, if it's a tool that allows you, whether that's making an ops manual more dynamic and a knowledge sharing base, or whether that's dealing with your HR and your payroll, your recruitment with a great tool, whatever the tool is, it's a tool that allows a franchisee to focus on what they love doing. And then it doesn't matter whether you're at the beginning of this life cycle or whether you're 10 years down this life cycle. Your enthusiasm is up. And that's always going to be good for the franchisee, it would be good for the franchisor, and it's great for the industry as well. So love that. Let's just read what let's read what Tim's put here. Penny Hopkinson, love this. The ops manual is the cornerstone of success. The more engaging it is, the more likely it is for franchisees to use it on a daily basis to ensure they are operating optimally. Yes, absolutely. Completely agree with that. As I said before, it's those tools, isn't it? get those tools in place to allow your franchisees to keep that enthusiasm up. Love it, love it. Look, we have started to come. Let me just check. Oh, I think we've got time for one more. So let's have a little look at Johnny. And Johnny has put, there are many milestones in the franchise life cycle with respect to royalties and royalty auditing that need to be considered. Both the franchisors and franchisee. When should a franchisor start a royalties auditing program? I have to go to here. When should an individual franchisee be audited? When the risk is heightened? Yeah, I mean, again, auditing, is a really important part of the process. It's a part of the process that needs to come into play at a stage in the life cycle that's right. And it's the same for the tools that we're talking about today. And again, I'm coming back to the fact that when you're dealing with this life cycle as a franchisee or a franchisor, just have the right tools, and there are lots of them out there, and we talk about them all the time on this. So, have that flexibility and that transparency to use those tools with your franchisees at the right time. But loving the conversation today. But we've got to a new part of the show, or relatively new, and it's one of my favorite parts of the show. Now, it's a part of the show where I am going to have to disappear, at least from your vision, for a little bit, because it is, I believe, illegal now to see me without a hat on. So this is the part of the show where we stop talking about franchising for a little bit. And we talk to our lovely guest, and we find out a little bit about our guest. And this part of the show is brought to you by PJ Murphy & Son, bespoke British hatters. So thank you, Paul, for the lovely hat, and hope to see you soon. So this is the part of the show where we get under the hat of the guest. So, Robert, we can stop talking about payroll, admin, HR, and franchising. And we can talk a bit about you. So, if you could tell us something about you, perhaps a claim to fame, someone famous you've met, an interesting hobby, anything like that.
Yeah, I think probably one of the most interesting things about me. So after college, I served in the Peace Corps, where, if anyone's not familiar with the Peace Corps, it's a 2-year volunteer service where basically you get sent to anywhere in the world, and you basically get placed in a community, an impoverished community, and you basically help them create sustainable skills. My focus was creating community economic, or creating community banks, where basically helping, mothers groups, mother associations, fishermen, really kind of pool their money together and really kind of create this kind of sustainable model for growth for them. Beautiful experience. I absolutely loved it. But there, interestingly enough, I was fortunate enough to be invited to be a part of this Pro-Am basketball league, which honestly, when I went to Peru, I had no idea that they really played basketball like that. And if anyone has seen kind of like Space Jam, if anyone's familiar with that movie, it was insane to me that, I thought I was going to be kind of this Jordan kind of player in the league, but it turns out that in the middle of nowhere in Peru, they actually had this insane league where they were recruiting Brazilians who were like 7 feet. So my team went 0-7 against everyone, or that league as a whole. So that was an insane experience, and maybe I wouldn't say my claim to fame, but I would say that's kind of where I hung up my basketball career, if you will.
Love it. Thank you, Robert. No, that's very cool. And look, I said to you, you're allowed to ask me a question. I get to ask you all these questions. So I always feel it's fair that you can get your own back on me. And I genuinely don't know what this is going to be. You don't have to, but you're free to ask me a question.
Okay. So many questions. I mean, I know you're very much a person of service. The hat, I feel like, is such a good, I guess my question to you is, how many hats do you have?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. Now let me think. Well, I have the OG, which of course is I have a emergency replacement for that hat, so an identical copy of that hat. And I've got woolly hat. I think I've got 6 hats. There you go. Not as many as Paul's got. I think he's probably got more like about 50 hats.
Okay.
Look, you know what it is though? In this lovely business we call franchising, we have to wear many hats. And it certainly helps us navigate that franchise life cycle. So there you go. That's a good way of wrapping things up today, Robert. Well, look, fantastic. We have now come to the end of today's episode. So first of all, I would like to thank Robert for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I would, of course, like to thank our wonderful audience for all of their comments, for spending their time. You really are what makes this show special. And it's always a pleasure to have you with us, to have these conversations. And I'm looking forward to many more in the future.
Harvey,
yes, go on, please.
Question, Harvey. If you don't mind me to jump in here. So you see, everyone can see that JustWorks QR code. So if you are interested, you're a franchisee or a franchisor, and I know this has an international audience, so we do only focus on US companies at the moment. But if you are interested in kind of learning more about our program as a whole, and want to see a demo and so forth, that QR code goes specifically to our database, where then an account executive will reach out to you and then really be able to walk you through and kind of get to the nuances of any questions you have and all that stuff. But I also want to say that, if you are interested in kind of anything else that we've spoken about on this show, feel free to reach out to me. My email is robert@justworks.com. You could reach out to me on LinkedIn. Very happy to. And lastly, I will plug in that we do have a really great partners program. So, if you're a franchise network, a consultant or a broker or whatever that may be, and you want to chat more about that, happy to talk there too.
Fantastic. And Robert, put your email address and things in the comments so that people can see that in the future. Or absolutely, as Robert said there, scan the QR code for more info. Anyway, so let's have a quick chat about what is happening later this week on our sister show. So on Franchising Brand Stories this Thursday, so that's the 10th of April at 5:15 GMT and 12:15 EST. We are speaking to the wonderful Ruth Brown and finding out what is under the hat of Home Instead. So please join us for that one. And next week on the Franchise Show, we are speaking about franchise succession. So we've been talking about the life cycle today. And we're going to be talking about some fantastic ways that you can positively move on towards the end of your experiences in franchising. So that will be Tuesday, the 15th of April, my wonderful son's birthday. And that will be 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for that one. So until next time, my friends, have a fantastic week ahead. And take very good care. Cheerio.